Oh, that was bad. That was really bad. Nashville Predators lose again, this time to the Seattle Kraken. If you didn't stay up late for that game, A, be happy with yourself. B, don't worry, we've got you covered. Everything what went wrong for the Nashville Predators last night. And is it time to break the panic meter out again and maybe actually keep it on high panic? Plus, Filip Forsberg and all the trade talk might have had his worst game that we've seen from him in a very long time. Also hear from John Hynes, who kind of went on a mini rant in the post-game press conference, sort of, kind of. A lot to break down in this edition of Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer and editor at ontheforecheck.com, and I have a partner in crime who is not feeling her optimist self right now.
No, I'm in a mood. Like maybe we need some sort of warning on this episode because I am in a mood. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at On the Forecheck.
Content warning: angry Predators fans.
That's true.
Well, hey, to you guys at home, thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We're happy to have you as always. So Ann and I, before this show, were talking, and we both kind of said the same thing. It's like, I don't even know what to say about this. Nashville Predators lost to the Seattle Kraken, who at the time had lost 7 straight games by a score of 4-3. Those include 3 goals in a span of 2 minutes and 30 seconds in the second period of that game. And then a familiar face, Colin Blackwell, shorthanded, gave the Kraken the lead for good in the third period. And what is your one word to describe this game?
Okay, now listen, I had to shuffle through a number of words, my friend, until I got to one that I felt like was appropriate enough. Because the game, for those of you who just heard, Nick's brief summary, it was as bad as it sounds.
Yeah.
There were some good things, but really we need to focus on some other things in this little game breakdown. So my one word, I'm actually stealing my one word from head coach John Hynes, and that word is exposed. This game against the Seattle Kraken was like that dream that you have where you wake up late and you run to your class and you realize you have an exam and you haven't studied for it. And oh, by the way, you're not wearing pants. Like
or
that,
shoes.
or shoes. That is what this game felt like. This game exposed all of the little things that at times the Nashville Predators have struggled with and have been able to sort of kind of gloss over, work around, cover up, maybe make some minor adjustments, but not really fix. It just showed them for all to see. It was a total exposure of Nashville's weaknesses and where they are falling short. Total exposure.
It really is, I guess, based on what you just said, kind of a textbook example of the phrase "caught with your pants down," right?
Oh, it's total nudie patootie. Total nudie patootie.
And the thing is, when you break down this game, and we're going to get into some of the finer points in just a second, but when you look at like what went wrong, like some of the individual stuff about what went wrong, none of that should be a surprise because it's stuff that we have been talking about on the show for a long time. It's stuff that, in a couple instances, stuff that we had been talking about really since November before the Preds won on their first really big run. And it's just stuff that it's like, okay, that's fine. We can clean it up. And then the longer it goes on And we're like, okay, you could probably clean it up, but hey, there's a tough schedule coming up ahead, and you're probably going to want to fix that before you get there. And then they never fixed it.
Nope, never fixed it. Nope, same thing. It's the same thing, only it was so blatantly obvious against Seattle. I mean, Seattle completely pantsed the Nashville Predators last night. Just pantsed us.
Yeah. I was going to say my one word, kind of along the same lines, is Groundhog Day. A tribute to Bill Murray, where he just wakes up and it's the same thing again and again and again. And I had that thought because when I was planning for the show, I woke up and thought, I'm going to have to talk about the same thing again today. And it's just, it's so frustrating. It's not like even like the Predators are finding new and creative ways to lose. It's the same mistakes every single time. The second period, again,
I
the
can't
worst
even.
period of the game. How many times have we talked about the Predators getting off to a fast start, falling asleep, and then having to dig themselves out of a hole at the very end of the game? It's the same thing. It's the same thing we've been talking about since 2019.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Like, why is nothing improving? Like, and that's the thing. Like, Matthias Ekholm, was kind of asked about the Preds' little mini slide last week, and he said, you know what, I don't have any concerns about our game because I think we're doing well. And I think like that he kind of based on saying it's like, well, there's a little things that we need to work on to improve. But he said he doesn't think there's anything wrong with their game. And at the time, it's like, yeah, sure. But it's been a month and a half that we've been talking about this, and you're not fixing what you need to fix. And that is part of your game. Now we have to look at the Nashville Predators and say there is something wrong with their game.
Yes, I would agree. And you can say all of the things, but it all boils down to execution. And you are, as a team, how you execute. You are not, as a team, what you say. You are not, as a team, how you identify. You are, as a team, what you execute and how you execute. And they have consistently executed the same way with the same struggles for far too long. And, against far less roster talented teams. At some point you are how you perform. And that has me feeling a little fired up today, because I think this is not great, and it's very difficult anymore to kind of cover it up and say, no, just a few adjustments. Yes, just a few adjustments. But if you never make them, a few adjustments becomes a really big problem. And Nashville, I think, has a really big problem.
Yeah. Let's go back a little bit, because back on, let's see, my eyesight doesn't work as well anymore. Back on January 11th, that was that super fun Colorado Avalanche game, the too many men call that everyone wants to talk about. But a super fun game. Predators won that in overtime. That was the tail end of their 5-game winning streak, and also the tail end of the stretch where they went 12-1-1. They were in first place in the Central Division at that point, tied for the best record in the West. Since then, they are 6-9-2. And here's the thing. We've talked about this before. Like, teams are going to have bad stretches. Teams are going to have moments where they need to kind of, dig themselves out, get off the horse, injuries or whatever. That's not what's happening here.
No.
For, maybe a week and a half ago, you could have said, you know what, the Predators are just in a bit of a slump. They need to fix one or two things and play their way out of it. Now I think you have to question how good the Nashville Predators actually are.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like a lot of these like slumps and stuff like that teams face during the year, they're missing players due to injury, suspension. They have like guys playing on different lines. They maybe have one star player who's a little bit off. The Preds aren't that.
No.
I mean, yeah, I mean, they lost Dante Fabro for a little bit, and that was an important thing.
Alexander Carrier has missed a
Alexander
couple of
Carey
games,
is
which I
off,
think
but
is,
it's
yeah,
not like you're missing Juuse Saros
right,
or you're having to play 2 weeks without Roman Josi or Filip
right.
Forsberg or Matt Duchene. Like, you're at full strength.
Mm-hmm.
This is your team. Like, this is the core of your team that's making a run to the playoffs. And you're not getting it done against teams like Seattle. And not only getting it done, it's not like, they played Seattle and were good enough to win, but hey, hot goaltending performance, something like that.
No,
They played bad.
they did
And
not play well enough to win.
four
No.
to 4-3 was the final score. That is way closer than it should have been.
Yes.
That
Yeah, no, for
the final
sure.
score easily could have been 5-1 Seattle. That probably would have been a better reflection of
Yeah.
how they played. That's how bad they played against a team that hadn't won in 7 games.
Yeah. And, I go back, Nick, and I think about what was this, what were the expectations for this team at the very beginning of the year? And we talked about things like competitive rebuild and, youth movement and all of that kind of thing. And I think that set an expectation that Nashville could attain. I think going through the season and seeing them win and go on some win streaks, and then losing games, I think it's been very easy to say, hey, it's just one or two little things. I think it's been very easy to excuse some of the losses that they've had. Hey, bad bounce, hockey bounce,
Right.
one play could have changed this, that, or the other thing. I think we need to go back to this is a team in a competitive rebuild because this team isn't putting things together. They're not putting their game together. And ultimately, that's who you are as a hockey team.
Right. A lot more to come from this in a second, including a couple of individual things. What went wrong for the Nashville Predators, and is it time to panic? Like, is the panic button hit? My hand is a panic button, I guess. But first,
I got
though,
that.
want to mention our friends at BetOnline. Football season might be over, but basketball season is in full steam ahead for both pro and college hoops. We, of course, got tournament season coming up, so a lot of money going to be changing hands. You need BetOnline. They've got the latest odds, totals, players' performance props, even where the next head coach who got fired is going to land. BetOnline is your number one spot for all of your sports betting needs, and it remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcast, and news to help you be a fantasy or betting expert. And of course, not just basketball, BetOnline is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, MLS starting back up too, and maybe baseball eventually. So head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about their trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Yeah, and we're talking last night's awful 4-3 loss to the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of words for it, so I'm just going to go ahead and let John Hynes weigh in. This was John Hynes last night when kind of asked about the game and, the Predators' recent slide.
It was our attention to detail. I think, it happened multiple ways. We gave up an odd man rush from a deep pinching and then through not covering, that's up ice checking and attention to detail. We had the puck on our stick on a breakout twice for another goal, wound up turning it over. That's the execution part. I think when you look at that stretch, it was what I said when our execution with the puck wasn't at the level it needed to be. That cost us in certain situations. And then also our attention to detail without the puck and the way that you check and, the commitment to defend the right way. Our details were not where they needed to be tonight, and we got exposed on it.
Yeah, he said your word, exposed.
My word. 100%. I heard that in the post game and I thought nailed it. Like, hate to say it, but you nailed it. This team got exposed, and those little things are being seen for what they are, and they are significant issues that the team has not been able to, or has not paid enough attention to, or has been overconfident. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's that they don't have the talent to fix. I don't know.
I mean, that's the question now that everybody's coming back, because this is kind of back to where we were last year, questioning if the players on the Preds are good enough to actually make a legitimate run.
Yeah.
And last year, arguably they shouldn't. I mean, they had Yossi, they had Juuse Saros with the best year of his career until this year. But now you have to go back to the drawing board. And, because I don't want people to think we're coming across as panicky after one loss.
No.
Or after one bad stretch run. Or like overreacting to a loss against Seattle, because I know that's kind of something that Preds fans are concerned about online, where they don't want the whole fire everybody and rebuild talk. And I'm not advocating for anybody to get fired. But I do think this brings up questions about how good the Predators are this season. I mean, we've seen them at their best, right? Like, we have seen the stretch runs this year. We have seen the 12 one-on-one stretch. We saw them, after that rough first week and a half, get off to a really good rest of the October, kind of led into that hot December and January. We know it's there, but we haven't seen it. I have not seen that level of play consistently since that 12 one-on-one stretch added. And, I'm going back and like looking at these games and stuff like that. But a lot of the wins even were games where you and I talked about, we're like, oh, this could have easily not gone the other way. Or, Juuse Saros kind of stole that one.
Yes.
So now you have to think, right?
Well, and I think it's difficult, because I'm with you, and this is not a knee-jerk reaction to one loss against Seattle. It's not so much about Seattle as it is what this game might tell us, because I think I've operated under the assumption that Nashville is a good team and that their losses are things where they need to clean up some things. They need to execute better. I'm frighteningly afraid that maybe we've been wrong. I've been wrong. And Nashville is a mediocre team where things have gone their way. And we have kind of overinflated the talent level on this team. And that's a hard thing to say, because when you look at statistics, you look at, Matt Duchene is having one of his best years. Filip Forsberg is having a great year. Filip Forsberg, we'll talk about him in a minute, about last night. You're looking at Juuse Saros, who is having, statistically a fantastic year. Roman Josi is having a good year. So you look at this and you think, no, this team has to be a good team that just slipped up against Seattle, but it's the same slip-ups. And you wonder, at some point in time when people show you who they are, you have to believe them. And I wonder if what we're learning right now is that Nashville is a mediocre, a borderline playoff team that's just gotten really lucky. And that sucks. For a optimist, that stinks. But I think you have to be realistic when you see a game like this game against Seattle, when you're seeing, like you said, we come on here and we do game breakdowns and we, do some analysis and what is going on. We're saying the same things over and over again. John Hynes is saying the same things over and over again, and while I don't think that this, I don't think it's good for the Nashville Predators to have some sort of crisis of confidence at this point. I also think they need to take a real good look in the mirror and decide, look, this is who we are. This is what we're going to try to learn this season. And maybe we need to get the stars out of our eyes. And that sucks.
It does suck. Well, because it was, you think back to where we were at the start of the year, where we were kind of questioning things. And then, we saw Matt Duchene have his turnaround year. Matt Duchene, I thought, had a pretty decent game last night.
He did.
One
goals.
of the few who did. I could say the same thing about Ryan Johansson. I thought he had a fairly decent game last night. And he's another one who kind of came back out, rebounded from a rough stretch, and is now, having a good year. And the Preds started racking up wins. And then we all thought, okay, we knew this team was good on paper. We're finally seeing it. Like, we're finally seeing what happens when everybody is playing, sort of at their expected level.
Mhm.
And now we're back to where we were last year, where we're seeing people not playing at their expected level. And it's frustrating because it's like, it's like if, you have a flat tire on your car and then you fix that flat tire and then you go back on the road and it's another flat tire, but this time on a different tire. Then
Yes.
it feels like that, where it's like as soon as we hone in on, okay, well, this one player had kind of a rough stretch. Now he's heating up, but now we have another player who's
Mhm.
doing a lot of, kind of bad hockey stuff right now. It feels like that, where it just doesn't seem like we're able to get all of the wheels going in one correct direction at one period of time. And you have to be concerned because we hadn't seen that really since the end of that that COVID stoppage, right? Like back
Yes.
at the end of December, the COVID / Christmas break. I mean, the Predators kind of rebounded and had that 5-game win streak, but there was also a lot of games in there, like we said.
Yeah. We've had some games, and it's the time in the season where really what you have is going to show through, because every game, and of course every game all season long is worth 2 points, but every game matters a little bit differently now because you have a better idea of where the standings are. And this is where you see who your team is. Like this is the time of year where you really see what do you have. And last night is an indication that maybe Nashville isn't exactly who we thought they were.
So Filip Forsberg,
Mhm.
we're gonna talk a little bit more about him in depth tomorrow.
Mhm.
Maybe the Preds trade deadline strategy. We had not Winter Classic, but Stadium Series stuff and crossovers this week. So we really haven't been able to dive into the news about David Poile saying that he's trying to actively re-sign him, doesn't want to trade him. So we're gonna get a little bit more into that tomorrow. But in terms of this game, I mean, one of the worst I've seen Filip Forsberg play this season.
Filip Forsberg really should have signed something earlier in the week. Like, and I'm not saying, he did. This was one of the worst games I've seen from Filip Forsberg. The shorthanded goal, the game-winning goal, that was a Forsberg, turnover. That was Forsberg kind of just checked out a little bit on the defensive end of that play, just sort of looped out around, assumed somebody else was going to take care of business. And the only person that took care of business, unfortunately, was Colin Blackwell, who no longer plays for the Nashville Predators. So this was a rough game by Filip Forsberg. And I don't think that it is, I don't think Filip Forsberg is suddenly a trash player, but I think, look,
No.
you've got to dial it in a little bit better than this. And there's a part of me that has to wonder, is all of this contract stuff just a giant distraction right now? He's being asked about it in media. It's being talked about, anytime you talk about the Nashville Predators right now, whether you're in Nashville or, in the NHL coverage, you're talking about Filip Forsberg and his contract. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it tomorrow. And I wonder how much of this maybe is a distraction. I don't know.
I mean, but that's, yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right that there might be something to that, because it is the number one story circling around
Mhm.
Nashville Predators, because if he's available, he's the best person on the trade market. So
Yes.
naturally, everybody's putting them under their microscope. The Preds are still in the position to make the playoffs. So it's kind of a weird situation for David Poile
Mhm.
right now. But the thing is, like, last year, everybody was on the trade block and everybody wound up having some of their best hockey of the season. Like, it's part of the game. And, Filip Forsberg had a pretty good game in the Stadium Series. Not the great past couple of weeks just in terms of
Mm-mm.
hockey. I know the stats have been there, but he's been kind of up and down in terms of just making good plays on the ice and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it seems like a game against Seattle, who is one of the worst teams in the league, who is treading water and has goaltending problems up the wazoo right now, it seems like that would have been a chance to kind of refocus and, get your game back. And that to me is another thing, Anne, because the Predators, of course, had a very big week last week with a lot of stuff that you could consider kind of a distraction, right? Like arena jersey retirement, the stadium series, and of course, after the stadium series, there's still events going on. The players had the little family skate and all that good stuff. So it's hard to transition out of that. It's like coming back to work from vacation,
Right. Yeah.
And so now you go on the road and you have to kick off a road trip. Seattle would have been perfect. Like perfect to kind of be like, okay, we know this is going to be rough, but this is a game where we maybe have some space to kind of, work some things out. We can maybe survive a little bit of a slow first period. And they wound up. Yeah, they did. Because they didn't play good in the first period, and they still went into second or first intermission with a 1-0 lead.
Right.
So,
and
go ahead.
Well, no, I think I just want to, you are dead right. My girlfriend and I, sometimes we go away on vacation together and we always talk about reentry, because coming back into real life, coming back into the house, coming back into kids and husbands, it's a whole thing. And I feel like there must be an element of that for the Nashville Predators, because everything has been a little wonky, and, even their schedule, they've had more time off than maybe what they're used to at this point in the season. But again, I looked at this game. I had the exact mindset you're talking about, Nick. I looked at this game and thought, thank goodness this is the Seattle Kraken, because reentry is rough back into regular life. And this is a team where maybe there's going to be enough grace that Nashville can make a couple of mistakes and still come out on top with 2 points. And they need these 2 points. You look at the games that Nashville is heading into. They've got San Jose, Dallas, Anaheim, and then what I consider high noon for this team, St. Louis and Minnesota.
Yeah.
Back to back. Yeah. This was a great opportunity for Nashville to work out some of these little things and to get an ounce of momentum going in what is more of a regular situation, a regular game without all the hubbub around it. And they couldn't get it done. And that is concerning to me. That makes me think maybe this is a team that has gotten lucky when we thought they've executed well.
Well, and also it's, compounded by the fact that you look at what the NHL standings are and the teams around the Preds. Dallas Stars are 7-2-1 in their last 10.
Yep.
And they are 1 point behind Nashville right now with the game at hand. The Edmonton Oilers, who could be competing with the Preds for that last wild card spot, are 7-3-0 in their last 10. So they're figuring some things out. They still need a goaltender, but they're still figuring things out, and they're trending in the right direction. So it's not only the fact that the Predators have kind of fallen off over the last month or so, but it's the fact that all these teams in which they're competing for playoff spots against are all firing on all cylinders right now. And, this is the NHL. They can clearly pick things up. Another team can fall off. We've seen it a bunch of times. But I'm with you. I am starting to question what we've seen this year based on the last month and a half of the season. And it's funny because I think back to all of our shows, and we talked about how this year was different, how they're not just getting lucky, they're playing better. And now I'm looking back and I'm like breaking things down a little bit more. And I don't know if that's a fair reaction or not. Like, I don't know if I'm suddenly re-questioning everything I thought I knew about the Nashville Predators season this year.
Yeah.
But it's a concern. I would say it's a big concern. And it does cause me to really evaluate whether the Predators are going to get into the playoffs, and therefore should reevaluate what's going to be the priority for Filip Forsberg.
I agree. And I think it's, you can't drag this out much longer. And like you said, they're in the perfect storm right now. You can't drag this out much longer with Filip Forsberg and expect the team to bounce back if they continue to struggle with everything. Kind of, it really feels like everything's kind of in limbo.
Right.
You know, they've got to poop or get off the pot, you know, pretty quickly here. You know, they just do. And I'm with you. I found myself watching the game last night and thinking, wait a minute, is this really just a competitive rebuild team who's gotten really lucky, or are they a second round playoff team who is just, you know, not cleaning up things? And for the first time in a long time, I think maybe we're a competitive rebuild team.
Yeah. That is going to be a question that's under the microscope, I think, for the next several weeks. And again, hopefully, you know, the Preds can turn it around, because like you mentioned, if they can win some of these games against Minnesota, against St. Louis,
Right.
that not only maybe restores the confidence a little bit, but that actually helps them in the standings a little bit too. So it's a magic bullet almost. A lot of things can probably be fixed with a couple of wins over the next few weeks. You know, we've talked about Filip Forsberg. He is going to be under the microscope again on tomorrow's Locked on Predators. Basically, we're just going to reevaluate anything and maybe take a look at his chances of re-signing, how much money should he be re-signed for, and if the Preds trade him, what a potential return might look like. Also, a couple of teams that might be good trade partners for the Nashville Predators. So you guys are definitely going to want to stay tuned for that one on tomorrow's show. Until then, Ann, where can the fine people find you online?
You can find my work at ontheforecheck.com, and you can find me on Twitter at AnnK_Mama on Ice.
You can find me on Twitter at _NSMorgan, or read my work at ontheforecheck.com. Also, be sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at LO_Predators. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to like the video, subscribe, leave a comment. Let us know what you thought of today's episode or what you want to see in a future episode moving forward. Until then, though, that's going to do it for us today on the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Have a good day, everybody.